なんだルーシー、まだそんな格好してるのか。
もう着替えてるって修行は？
もちろん分かっている。こういうのはメリハリが大切だ。よく遊び、よく食べ、よく寝る。
肝心なものが抜けてる気が。3ヶ月しかないのに不安だな。
Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. We are talking about Fairy Tail today. Fairy Tail is a game that I was really looking forward to, not so much because it is a licensed title for a favourite anime property, but actually because of the publisher and developer involved. The game comes to us from Gust. Now Gust is a favourite JRPG developer of mine of all time, as I think anybody who follows this channel knows. They are behind the likes of Blue Reflection, the Atelier series, Knights of Azure, Art and Ellico from beforehand, and I don't think there's been a single instance where Gust has let me down in terms of giving me a game that I thoroughly enjoy and appreciate. So I didn't know anything about Fairy Tail going in. I knew nothing about the characters, the narrative arc, or anything like that, but I was really interested in it because I figured that Gust would do something to make me interested in Fairy Tail, and luckily for me I was quite right. I've actually come away from this game really interested in learning a lot more about Fairy Tail. Unfortunately, the anime property is so long-lasting now, there's so many episodes or volumes of the manga, that I'm not sure I would actually be able to catch up at this point. But I am certainly intrigued and want to learn more about this world, these characters, and everything else. Not that the game doesn't do a good job of, giving me the basics, but I do come away from this wanting a whole lot more. The other reason that I was really interested in this game is that it's an interesting one from Koei Tecmo, the business point of view. So Koei Tecmo has done a lot of licensed titles, as I think pretty much everybody knows. There are the One Piece games, there's Berserk, there's Fist of the North Star, there's Arslan, and there's the work that they've done with companies like Nintendo on Hyrule Warriors and Fire Emblem Warriors, and they've got that Persona Warriors game coming up as well. But the thing that's consistent across all of that is that they've always been that Musou Warriors action game, even when they've tried to do something a little bit more JRPG like the Dragon Quest Heroes games. They've still basically been a Warriors game in all but name. So this one is interesting. This is the first time that Gust has worked on a licensed title, and it's the first time that Koei Tecmo has created a JRPG out of a licensed property. It could be that if this game is a success, and if the Fairy Tail fans in particular respond to it well, we may see more of these licensed JRPGs in the future, and the next One Piece game, for example, may be a JRPG. We might get another Arslan game, and it might be a Warriors game. It might be a JRPG, and I would absolutely love that. Arslan being an excellent example of a title that Koei Tecmo has managed to introduce me to the entire property with, and I came away from that one absolutely loving it. I checked out the anime. I really wish the books that the whole series is based on were localized into English. Unfortunately, they're not, but I would love to see a JRPG based on that property going forward. But we're not here to talk about Arslan, we're here to talk about Fairy Tail, and I want to use this video to talk about what I really appreciate about the game and Gust's approach to JRPGs as a whole. I have got a review up on digitally-downloaded.net as well. You can check that out for more of my kind of in-depth thoughts about the game itself. But just generally speaking, what really attracts me to Gust is their ability to keep the kind of classical essence of the JRPG in their work. So, for one thing, this Fairy Tail game is turn-based, and where a lot of other JRPG developers and publishers, even the kind of mid-tier, are starting to experiment with much more active combat systems, Gust is one of those few ones that is really sticking to a very traditional style of turn-based combat, and that's appealing to me anyway, as somebody who grew up playing JRPGs, I've seen the decline of the turn-based combat system and been a little bit disappointed. That's not to say I don't enjoy action-based combat when it's done well as well, but there is something very appealing and nostalgic about turn-based combat systems. And it's something that I don't feel like it needs a whole lot of innovation done to it either. A lot of developers try to innovate by adding action or quick-time events into the turn-based combat and whatever. This Gust approach doesn't really do that, and that is immediately appealing right out of the gates. Another thing that really appeals to me about Gust games is there's an efficiency and respect for the player's time in them. And this is something that I've talked about quite a bit in videos and in articles that I've written in the past. But as much as I love the JRPG genre, I do feel like developers are feeling the pressure to give players so much content that they're actually losing the essence of the game and the appeal in the process. So I always point to Persona 5 as a good example of this. Persona 5 doesn't do anything that Persona 4 before it didn't already do. It was really very much a retread of the same kind of themes and ideas and approach to the game, and yet Persona 5 was twice as long as Persona 4. And I would argue that a lot of that is kind of unnecessary bloat that doesn't really respect the player's time and actually dilutes the strength of the narrative as a result. I think Persona 4 is a much better game because even though it's not exactly concise, it's about 60 hours to play through itself, it is a lot more efficient in how it does things. What I love about Gust is they know that their games are not these massive epics that are, equivalent to War and Peace in terms of the quality of the storytelling, and that's fine. This is not a problem. There's nothing wrong with creating a story that is not of the depth and intensity of a War and Peace. You don't need every single thing that you write to be over 1,000 pages long. The same goes for game development, and Gust games generally sit around the 20-hour, maybe 30-hour mark, depending on the one that you're playing. Fairy Tail is a good example of this. I think it's about 20 hours to get through Fairy Tail. There's a little bit of post-game stuff you can do if you want. There's plenty of optional things if you really get into it and want to level your characters up all the way and really max everything out and get all the trophies and all of that kind of stuff. There is ways to extend how long you play the game. But the core of it, if you're just there for the narrative and the experience itself, that can be over in about 20 hours, which is an amazing respect for the player's time. And it's a respect, I think, for the property itself. What Gust has done has kind of taken a Crib Notes version of Fairy Tail. They've condensed a lot of the early narrative arcs into a small amount of space in such a way that if you are like me and haven't played Fairy Tail, you can still follow along with the story. You do benefit if you do know the story, that you can fill in some of the blanks. But they've caught the essence of the narrative, hit the key notes, and then allowed players to move on. And I think in this day and age that is a sign of respect, and actually it's good writing. One of the things I learnt when I did creative writing courses back at university is that you never want your story to be longer than what it's worth. You need to understand early on just what the story is saying, what it's driving at, the key themes, and you need to hit all of that stuff at an adequate level of depth without going so far as to become bloated and become too wordy and become inefficient, because then that becomes quite poor writing. And I think a lot of JRPGs are poor writing on a technical sense because they are just kind of overblown. Fairy Tail sidesteps that nicely. Now, another thing that I really love about this game is the fan service and the sense of humour that this thing has. This game has a lot of fan service in it, and I imagine that is the case with Fairy Tail itself. Just looking at the character designs, I know that they're appropriate and well done on the anime character designs. So you look at that and you just know that this is a pretty fan servicey series, but it's a playful one. It's not designed to be, sexy. It's not designed to be titillating or whatever. It is designed to be kind of charming in its fan service and silly and fun and light-hearted, and the game hits all of those notes. So a lot of the character side quests involve fan service elements, like this one that you're seeing on the screen right in front of you. Wendy here, she has a bit of a complex about the size of her chest, And you play as Lucy, who's the girl with the big chest, and her goal is to make Wendy feel good about about her bust size, and that is actually a major character arc moment for Wendy within the game. By completing this side quest, you unlock the ability for her to significantly improve her powers and whatever. It works a little bit like the Persona games in that you have those kind of side stories with the characters, with the narrative arcs, and each time you finish one of the narrative arcs, they get some new abilities and whatever. That scene, or this scene here, is one of those ones for Wendy. But again, it's a very efficient way of doing it, where the Persona ones have these kind of, upwards of half an hour long interactions between characters and dialogue sequences and story-driven cutscenes. This one gets it done in just a couple of minutes, and it has the essence of everything that you want from these kinds of scenes, but in a very efficient way. And it's very fan servicey and it's silly. Another example of fan service is the beach scene. You would have seen that at the start of this video. That beach scene comes within the first couple of hours, and you can just get the sense that the developers were itching to get to that scene as soon as the tutorial moments were finished and they had an excuse to throw the characters at the beach. They were there in their swimmers and looking very fan servicey indeed. So Fairy Tail really does a good job with all of the fan service and capturing that kind of essence of the game as well. It's a very funny game to play. It's not designed to be taken seriously, and it doesn't let you take it seriously either, which is always a good thing, I feel. There are some JRPGs that really get themselves loaded down with being quite serious, and there's nothing wrong with being a serious story or giving players a serious JRPG to play, but it is nice to have that light and fun approach as well. Another thing that this game has is a lot of little references back to Gust games itself. There's a barrel that you can find, and as anybody who's played an Atelier game knows, when a character finds a barrel, they yell out a taru, which is the Japanese word for barrel, in a very joyous way, and it's actually a little bit of a tradition within the Atelier series that fans look forward to hearing the taru of their favourite characters. That's a nice little nod to Gust history within Fairy Tail. You can also tell that the engine is very Gust in approach, or the aesthetic. This game apparently has a different engine to what was used in Atelier, but it does look very Atelier-like, with that nice, simple and clean aesthetic, but not basic, if that makes sense. So Gust always works on quite limited budgets, of course, and they can't create something of the depth of a Final Fantasy VII or even Dragon Quest, as a similar cel-shaded game. Those games, Fairy Tail can't have the visual depth of those games, but it does hit the right notes, and I think that what it does right is focus on the areas that you really need to focus on. So the character models, for example, are all really nicely detailed, nicely animated, and quite vibrant and enjoyable. The backgrounds, meanwhile, are simple, but coloured in a way that they're not distracting or gaudy or unattractive. So there is a minimalism about Gust, which I always find really appealing as well. I'm not a big fan of games that are overwrought and overdone. I feel like just with storytelling, there is a niceness about being minimalist and being efficient, which allows the player to enjoy what's important about the game without getting lost in the details. And I think Gust really understands that as well. So while these games are never going to be major blockbusters and they're not going to win Game of the Year awards, I do think that there's a great place for them, and I think that this Fairy Tail game has really brought me back to what I love about the JRPG genre. I think it's done a great job in reminding me why I like Gust games, and there's a simplicity, efficiency, and honesty about this game and what it's doing that I think is really, really admirable. So I definitely recommend it. I can't recommend it to absolutely everybody because, like I said, it's certainly not for everybody because it is that really niche for JRPG fans thing. But one thing I do know is a lot of people were wondering whether they would be interested in this if they weren't fairy tale fans, existing fairy tale fans, and I do think that this game does hit those notes. So if you're not a fan of fairy tale, you can still enjoy this on the basis that it is just a really nice, clean, and enjoyable JRPG. So that's enough for this video. I've rambled on. Please do read my reviews for my review for a more cohesive thought about the game. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoy my videos, and please do consider backing me on Patreon, because even $1 a month really helps me to expand what I'm looking to do with this channel. I hope you enjoy Fairy Tail. Do let me know what you think about it once you get along and start playing it. We can certainly talk about it and Gust and JRPGs in general. And otherwise, have a great week. We will see you at the next video.